Welcome back to the Balanced Hairstylist podcast. My name is Sarah Beck. I will be your host. This podcast is here to support us, to support the mental well-being of hairstylists and beauty professionals, because we are often therapists, or as we call ourselves sometimes, therapists, but we have no formal training in any of this. I'm really excited about today's episode. It started because I was chatting with one of my clients who happens to be a therapist, and she told me about how it was hard for her sometimes to decompress in her break room between sessions, and that sometimes going to a break room doesn't actually feel like a break. It's oftentimes just more stimulation. And sometimes for a break, she just needed quiet. And I remember thinking as I was chatting with her, this resonates so much with me. And I think it's going to resonate with all of you as well. We love our salons, we love our people, but sometimes our spaces can get noisy and overstimulating. And when we don't have room to come back to ourselves, our nervous system starts syncing up to all of that energy that is around us all day. So, today we're talking about how to come back to ourselves when we've been attuning to others all day, and we're breaking it down into something that actually feels doable. High effort, medium effort, and low effort ways to reset your nervous system. Because sometimes we have 15 minutes and sometimes we have 15 seconds. And one huge takeaway I've had since recording this with Megan, and something that I do now every single day after work, is a simple third person conversation. It really has helped me decompress and reconnect with myself, and also just have so much more compassion for myself. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear this tip about a third person conversation. All right, let's get into it. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Megan Dippold, a licensed marriage and family therapist who describes herself as a true hope holder. She works with individuals and couples navigating identity work, grief, trauma, and infidelity, always creating a space where people can be fully and unapologetically themselves. Megan and I met because she is my client. And we have had so many great conversations when she has sat in my chair about how much overlap there really is between being a therapist and being a hairstylist. And so I'm thrilled for her to be here with us today to not only share her wisdom and experience with us, but also how it connects to the work that we do behind the chair. So, welcome, Megan. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so stoked.
So this all kind of came about because Megan was sitting in my chair and talking about how her work as a therapist. She was explaining this situation to me, and it just resonated so much. And you were talking to me about how when you were with clients all day, back to back sessions with clients, then you would go into your break room with other therapists, and how that really didn't feel like a break to you and what that meant for you. And it resonated so much with me. And I think it will resonate with other hairstylists because oftentimes our break rooms are not sort of a place of quiet or reprieve. So, can you explain to us a little bit or just kind of describe what that was for you and what that means?
Totally. It is like the catch 22 of it all the work that I love directly competes with the rest that I need as an introvert and someone who really needs solitude. So there's always this perpetual clash just in the job itself. I feel like I have capacity for that, but then in those breaks between clients, I felt this pull, right, of everyone else is in the break room or someone's asking if I can chat, or I just got grabbed in the hallway between sessions, and just felt and still feel all of this push and pull. When do I respond to that bid for connection and socializing versus when do I say no? I need to go shut my door and be literally by myself and do nothing but stare at a wall or read a book or something like that. It's just a real difficult tension point, I think, in that I work at a practice where I could genuinely say I love all of my coworkers, and I find that we're all friends and enjoy deeply time with them. But on in my workday, it is such this tension point of I love you and I don't want to see you right now. And that's such a tough line to toe.
When you said that you identify as an introvert, I think a lot of us as hairstylists would as well. There is a lot of extroverts as well,
Mhm.
or ambiverts as the in-betweeners.
Yeah.
But I think that's what happens to me. I can speak for myself when I'm with clients. The range of stories that we hear in through the day, and I'm sure for you as a therapist as well, is could go from I just lost my job to I just got a new puppy to
Yes.
just kind of like what movies are you watching right now? And so it can have a host of a range of topics and just kind of allowing your system to sort of process all of that is a lot, I think. Even if it's not even heavy stuff, it's just going from one sort of type of person or energy to the next.
Yeah.
Be able to sort of stay within yourself and not kind of get absorbed in others and others' stories. I know that when I have that and then I go to the break room and there's, a lot of people in there, a lot of conversation or, maybe gossip or, you know, whatever it is, it's not a place for me personally to be able to have that moment for myself. And so I think having that place of quiet is really important. So what happens in our nervous systems or like how do you deal with that when you have back to back people and you feel like you've kind of lost yourself in that?
Yeah. That's such a good way of putting it, Sarah. Like lost yourself just resonates so deeply because I think so often the relationship of therapist to client, stylist to client is one directional. There's some mutuality where we're both taking up space, but different space and occupying different roles. And so there is this one directional relationship. I am providing, I'm giving, that kind of thing. Yeah, I so resonate with that idea of like, where am I at? What's going on for me? Kind of that coming back to yourself. So for me, and I know you mentioned extroverts in the field. I have dear colleagues who are like, the way that I come back to myself is by being in that break room and chatting with the people and feeling like I get to be in a more mutual conversation. I know that that exists. It's so not me that I am like, I can't even be in that break room, right? So there's such this range of what that looks like person to person, of course. But for me, yeah, it is that like I have to step away, I think, in order to come back to myself. Because what I know, so our nervous systems are working, our brains are scanning all the time. What's going on? How do I categorize this? What do I do with this? And for someone who is a recovering people pleaser, my tendency is to fawn. And so that will really readily look like, what do you need, Sarah? How do I go to you? It's replicating that exact same thing that's happening in sessions when it is very much my job to be going to you and meeting you where you're at. My nervous system is doing that same thing in conversations with friends and colleagues. And so what's happening there for me is in that fawn response, when we're in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, our body thinks it's under attack. So if I'm finding myself in those social situations and what's happening for me is not just I'm chatting, I'm having a great time, but I'm like, oh, you're stressed. I need to be stressed with you. I need to help you work through this client issue. I need to talk to you about. I'm like getting dysregulated with you and it's not, I'm just chatting. What my body thinks is that it's under attack, it's under threat. And so what's happening there is all my vital signs are going up. I'm in that hyper arousal place outside of this window of tolerance. All my vital signs are up. My brain is basically responding as though I'm out in the woods and I've run into a bear. It's going, we're not safe. We have to fix this. We have to fix this. And so you mentioned before the range of what we're talking with clients about can be so huge, but our bodies don't know the difference between distress and eustress. So that negative stress and the positive stress, and just going, if we're doing that all day long, we're frying. We're frying the nervous system, right? If you think about, again, that example of I'm on a hike and I run into a bear, could we sustain that energy all day long? No, we're going to crash super hard. For me, I'm going to crash and come home and be so grumpy. And anything that my partner needs from me, I'm like, no, it's my time now. So, relationally, that's going to look like a lot of resentment. That's going to look like a lot of frustration. I can be in that break room having the conversations of my own volition, but from that like dysregulated kind of fawning place. And I'm doing relational harm because I'm sitting there and I'm going, I don't want to be here. I need to be in solitude. You're keeping me stuck in this conversation. I'm just heaping suffering on top of suffering. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. And I think that is going to resonate with a lot of
Yeah.
people, that I think a lot of us are freezers and fawners,
Yeah.
probably. I mean, I don't want to generalize, but people pleasers. And so that makes so much sense that, and I've never thought about it like that. But when I'm with other people, I'm not necessarily coming down because I'm constantly in that, what do you need still?
Yes.
Even though I'm not with a client, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So, how do you,
Mhm.
and that, like, maybe how you do this would resonate with us, like, have awareness that we're in that fawning or freezing or
Yeah.
in that freeze fawn state,
Yes.
and how do we manage that throughout our day
Yeah.
so that when we go home, we're not, there's all these, like, kind of, infamous videos on Instagram of hairstylists just, like, disassociating, like, zoning out in their car after a day at
Yeah.
work, kind
Yeah.
of like this. So how can we help ourselves and our nervous systems, like, throughout the day so that we don't have that at the end of the day, and then we don't have anything left to give to our partners or friends or families outside of work?
Yes. Oh, that is like the $1,000,000 question. If I if I nail it, I'll come back and I'll let you know. It's a perpetual, like, I am adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. But I think part of it is just the bare bones structure of my day. So I won't just go back to back indefinitely. I have how many people can I see before I have this cutoff of I need a break, I need a lunch, I need time to do admin. I need to, again, just sit on the floor and like breathe for a second. Um, so some of that is structure of my day. But then we come back to that break room conversation and those polls, the awareness of other people's bids for time, for energy, camaraderie, all of that. And that's, I think, the hardest part of it for me because
Yeah.
my schedule can say it's time for a break. But again, that fawning response can say, you're still on. Somebody needs you. Somebody wants a response from you here. And so, where that comes into play for me, I think first and foremost, that recovering freeze, fawn, people pleaser response. I can't make those decisions about how I'm going to spend those breaks in the presence of someone else. I have to take a really
Mm.
strategic, like, I'm closing my door. Let me, like, no one else is in the room right now. What do I need this break to look like? What capacity do I have? What needs are present for me? Is it the need for connection or is it the need for solitude? Asking those questions in my office, taking a strategically timed bathroom break, and just really checking in with those things. I will say that has also been an effort for me. So I think at this point where I'm at is I've practiced this, and that honesty with myself isn't that difficult when I create the space for it. Where I would sit not too long ago is I would create that space and come up with a big fat, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I've been so disconnected and I am having such a hard time reconnecting that I had to do a little bit more work of like regular reps of what is it that I'm feeling emotionally? What is it that I'm feeling in my body somatically? Like regularly practicing that, Sarah. I mean, like setting alerts on my phone to check in on those things. Like, hey, you got to pay attention. What is going on? So I think all of that to say it's that I can't do anything with it if I don't know what's happening. So that familiarity of like what is happening within me What do I need? And at the point where I'm at now, I think when I ask those questions, there's an open line of communication that I can often find that answer pretty quick.
Mm.
Is my body wants to sit on the floor in the sunlight. Great. I don't want to sit in my therapist chair, right? What I want is to take a lap around the building. What I want is to talk about something completely not work related, a silly, frivolous thing. What I want to do is watch reality TV and turn my brain off, right? Like when I ask myself the question, that communication channel is open and I think I can find it. Um, but it has been a huge process of learning how to communicate with myself and then figuring out how I actualize those things. At the risk of being too long winded here, one
No.
of the things that I talk with clients a lot about and talk with myself a lot about is how do we reset that nervous system? It's the question you're asking. I am having to be really honest with myself in like, what am I actually going to choose? Right. So, a lot of the time when I talk with clients about soothing, grounding, breathing, I glaze over. And then I go home and I don't do it either. And I think the reason is I have to find what works for me. So I am not prone to sitting down and doing a breathing exercise, especially if I've been up here in my energy all day long. That's gonna be so hard for my body to like slow down, even if that's what I need. What I am prone to do, especially if it's a telehealth day between sessions, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna like snuggle my pup. Like that's gonna help my nervous system slow down and regulate. He has the silkiest, softest ears in the world, and that's gonna be really grounding. Or what I
Mm.
am prone to do is I'm prone to take my shoes off and sit in a different spot in my office or wash my hands in warm water and really feel that, right? So finding what are those things that I'm already bought into doing? What are my high effort, medium effort, low effort options? Because if my grounding soothing as I go for a big long run, my opportunity for doing that is going to be like this big. It has to be timed just right. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think some things that we think about is just go in the break room and take some breaths.
Yeah.
And it may not feel when you're up here, like you said, when you're so elevated, it's hard to just take some breaths to kind of
Yeah.
come down here. Like it may be one of my favorites is getting an ice cube from and just really kind of holding that ice cube.
Yes.
One of the things that came up for me when you were talking about all this is the reason the balanced hairstylist is even here is because I have burnt out to a point of like having to leave the industry and figuring out I had to figure out how to do this differently. And I think one of the biggest things that I've done to change how I do hair is my schedule. And that was the first thing that you said.
Yeah.
And I I don't double book. And I take, as Megan knows, a long time for an appointment. I leave a lot of space, especially if you're a new client. It's always an hour and a half, no matter what. And I try to leave 15 minutes between appointments. It's not always that way, but I try to do it at least a couple of times a day so that when I have that space between clients is when I take that time for myself to say, what is it that I need right now? Is it that was a really heavy appointment
Mhm.
and I need to write down on a post it note, gosh, what Susan just told me was really sad.
Mm.
And I feel really sad for Susan. And this is not mine to hold on to. And then I throw it in the trash,
Yep.
as in, like, I'm no longer holding on to that. So it's not always taking a deep breath. We think of these nervous system resets as like, just take a breath. Well, breath work is wonderful and getting oxygen into your blood and your body is wonderful. And it can help
Mhm.
reset your nervous system, but it's not always the way. Screaming into a pillow, whatever. Like if something like enraged you. But I think the biggest thing is practicing too outside. And I was going to ask you if you do this, like practicing coming back to yourself outside of work so that when you have that 5 minutes at work
Mm.
to check in on yourself, you're easily, as you said, with more practice, you've gotten better at that to be able to know what you need more easily,
Yes.
uh, to when you're not necessarily meditating, but checking in on yourself, checking in on your needs, journaling, meditating,
Mhm.
anything that you're doing for self-care to return to yourself will help in those few minutes at work when you have that time to check in and see what your needs are. I think it's easier to access that part of you,
Yeah.
if you're practicing it outside, and if you just practice it more and more and more. I think that's important.
Totally. I mean, think about the difference, Sarah, of like a new friendship versus like those long standing friends and what those coffee hangs sound like. Where, okay, that new friend, we're kind of feeling each other out. You're going to get parts of this story. There's lots of warming into. And then there are those long standing friendships where I can just jump right in and give you the real and the nitty gritty.
Mhm.
That's that relationship with ourselves too, right? So if I've been disconnected from myself and I'm not paying attention, my body's not prone to giving me a lot of information. She's not like, you're going to pay attention to this. You'll actually take me seriously. There's gonna be like a slow to warm relationship budding there versus that practice that you're talking about of like, okay, let me tell you what's really going on. Like, I need to get out of here yesterday. Like, I really need some space. So, yeah, definitely agree with this idea of it's a practice. And early on in my career, there was a lot of very intentional shifting in and out of my workday. And so, like, I had a very kind of methodical practice of how I leave my office, right? Like, I take a second, I shut off all the lights, I look, I close the door, and there's this mental process going of like, work is going to stay here, right? I'm going to leave it right here. Or um, in grad school, seeing clients, it's just this fire hose of so much all at once. I would I had a longer commute and I would say, okay, you can kind of unwind from your work day and be thinking about clients and the heaviness that you just carried during your drive. But like when we get out of the car, we're going to leave this here, which sometimes meant I was like circling the block for a second to be able to get back to me enough to go back into my life. At this point, those aren't things that I'm like having to implement. And it's a lot more of small check in questions. What's happening for me right now as I'm holding this? And I think with that practice too, Sarah, like I'm not great at it, but there are definitely more opportunities when I'm in conversation with people where I can be, on the one hand, holding what's going on for them and also aware of like, ooh, I'm tensing up. Like, this isn't going on for me. I can relax my shoulders. Like,
Mm.
this is mine. It is hard fought territory, but I do think that that practice contributes to that. Like, both of these things can actually happen simultaneously. I don't have to just be in your world and what's going on for you.
That is something that I have learned over the last just 5 years. I've been doing hair for 24 years now, long time.
Yeah.
And I think only in the last 5 years have I been able to sort of almost feels like a little bit of a separation
Mm,
where I'm such an empath and feeler that I would be like truly feeling what they're feeling. And
yeah.
so there is this sort of enmeshment almost,
Mhm.
enmeshment, then having that awareness of like, this is theirs, this is their story. Shoulders come down from the ears. I can kind of separate myself and say, wow, this is a lot. Even in my mind sometimes, I don't know why I keep saying Susan. This is something that I do on the regular. I just choose a name and I keep with it. But, like, Susan, wow, Susan, I'm feeling for her. Like, I can even mentally say that in my head, and that even helps sort of separate myself a little bit.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I have heard someone say, like, being able to do that is the difference between holding a piece of paper right up here and trying to read it and like putting it out here and trying to read it. It's that I am aware and you're still centering what you are feeling rather than what Susan is feeling and experiencing. Like it's not Susan is really sad. This is so much going on for her. It's this I am feeling sad for Susan because she's telling me something sad, but it's rooted in what's going on for me as I'm taking this in that I think we don't get a ton of coaching or support or even encouragement in doing. So it's very counterintuitive. And I think especially for the like caring professions that we find ourselves in, it's, I don't know about for you, but for me, it has at times felt like I'm breaking the rules. I'm doing something wrong to be conscientious of and aware of myself while showing up for someone else. That we almost talk about that as like the cape that caring professions wear, is we are just so out here with you. And I think that that does lead to the burnout that you're talking about.
As you said, it's something that we're not taught. And so I think just being able to have this conversation, if I had this kind of knowledge or awareness when I was first starting out, oh my goodness, like I hope for all the young hairstylists and beauty professionals out there that this can be a tool that you take that it can help transform your day, which can help transform your outside your work and, can help create more longevity in your career because you're not facing that burnout if you know these tools and steps to take. One thing I did want to mention, going back to having that nervous system reset and breaks,
Mhm.
is oftentimes in salons, we don't have, as a therapist, you can close your door and you can have your space to yourself. We often don't have that. And so, some of the things I was talking to a friend of mine who's a hairstylist that works in a fairly busy salon. And she said at this point, she's kind of an in betweener. She likes to have that break room camaraderie and conversation. And sometimes she's like, I need silence to come back to myself. And she said people are starting to learn her cues and know when she needs space or not. And so one of the things that we talked about was having headphones. Like earbuds are great, or AirPods, whatever you call them. I'm an old person. Earbuds or like actual physical headphones to sort of cue people, like, and listening to quiet music or listening to one of the meditations that I have here on this podcast to kind of help you come back to yourself. And then also, I had an idea for these busier salons to have like a quiet corner because often there's only so much space in a salon. And so there's only one break room, but to create a corner maybe with like a beanbag chair or a little light, a little lamp, and a little table with a book or something so that people know when you're in the corner that you need quiet. Um, I've been working with a salon doing quarterly retreats with them, and they have a whole little space in their break room with yoga mats. And they have these, they're called rad balls, which is like myofascial release balls. And they got a little sand timer so that they can kind of keep track of how long they're there, but it's not a phone timer. So just any kind of little ways that you can create for yourself that you can check in on yourself to see what is it that I need in this moment. We can continuously come back to ourselves throughout the day so that we're not taking on too much and then burning out at the end of the day or at the end of the week or at the, in our careers. So, Megan, what happens to us as hairstylists when we are multitasking so much throughout the day?
Yeah. There's so much input like we're talking about. And what we know is that, and you've probably heard this, we can't actually multitask. And yet, how much of your day is spent doing multiple tasks simultaneously? What's happening, I think about it like a computer window with tabs open. So we can have a bunch of tabs open and we're just flipping rapidly between them. So you're like, Susan's going through a divorce. What foils do I use? Oh my gosh, when's my next bathroom break? Right? All of that's happening and we're just flipping really quickly. Think about that same computer screen. The more tabs you have open, the more sluggish your computer's going to get. We're going to eventually hit a crash, right? And so that's what's happening in our brains all the time and in our nervous systems. It's so much data, it's so much input, and the pace is frenetic. And so at the end of even an appointment, I'm thinking your nervous system has probably been in survival mode for a lot of that. Because again, we're flipping so quickly through so many things. We're just fried. And then you do that all day without a break. You do that, you fuel up with more caffeine, and your body says, okay, now everything's elevated even more. You do that, you don't get to eat a lunch, your body's going, okay, we're in survival mode. Our brains don't know that the stressor's over. So in like the classic stress response cycle, there's a stressor event, right? I'm in the woods, I see a bear. There's a body response. All my vital signs go up. I'm prepared to fight, to run away, to freeze, whatever. And then the stressor's over. I either fought that bear and I won, and I go tell my village and we celebrate, or I don't survive it and then like the story's over. But there's a very clear beginning, middle, end. With modern day stressors, our brains and bodies so infrequently get the cue that it is over. So if you think about, I'm going through that appointment with a client and I'm just staying up here, and then I go to my next appointment and I'm up here, like we're just going to keep climbing. We never get that signal that it is okay. We used up that energy that our body just gave us. We used up that adrenaline. It's over. You can come back down now. And so the multitasking of it all is just ramping all of that up.
It makes so much sense. It is a lot. And it's validating because it does feel like a lot. And it's so important. I think what you just said is, to me, it sounds like I need to constantly tell myself I am safe. This is not actually a threat to my body or
Yeah.
my well-being.
Yeah.
Okay, I just multitasked in that appointment. And PS, Susan told me this really sad story or traumatic story or whatever that then I have to, after this appointment, if I don't allow that come down, finish that cycle of stress, I'm actually not in danger.
Yeah.
Then yes, it continues to go up. And no wonder we can't function at the end of the day. And so, just even more so, solidifying that importance of taking those breaks to not only come back to yourself, but then say, like, okay, this is the end of the stress cycle, and
Yes.
tell myself that I am safe.
Yes. Totally. Because it is so much. And I think we have done maybe a little bit of a disservice in thinking like our brains are so infallible. If I know, well, I was just chatting with a client, like it's actually not my life, that my body's going to follow right in line, but no. If I'm telling myself cognitively even, I am safe, that's her story, it's not mine, but my body's still ramped up, they're going to be communicating with each other. So
Mhm.
we have these two different channels of communication. What am I thinking about what's going on? And what is my body telling me is going on? And if we don't attend to both of those, they're going to like buddy up, basically. I can be so calm in my body, but if I'm going, this is bad, this is my responsibility, I need to fix this for her, I'm responsible, what do I say? My body's going to follow me, and vice versa. My brain can be really calm, but if I am like, heart rate is up and I'm physically rushing around my space and it's constant chatter, well, my brain's going to follow right in line too and go, we must be under attack the way that we're moving right now.
I think that's one of the things that I have noticed myself is just slowing down while I'm working
Yeah.
and not having that rushed feeling.
Yep.
And I've noticed, like, even as I'm talking, my speech is slowing,
So
like slowing down and cutting even slower and taking my time when our brains are saying, okay, Sarah, you just had an appointment. You need to calm yourself down. You're safe. Your body is safe. That story is not yours. Release what is not yours. But my body is going, but I've been here. How
Mhm.
do how do we merge those two, or how do we get our bodies
I like it.
to, yeah, to calm?
There's a lot of different things we can do. And again, it's kind of, I like to find what you are already bought into doing. So for you, if that's breathing, breathing's great. One that I love because it helps my brain. I find for me that jumping straight from I'm up, up, up to I'm trying to calm down, I need something in between. So my brain needs to be a little bit more engaged than just like I'm trying to be present. So one that I
Mhm.
love is the five senses. Have you heard of this one? Do you know
I
it?
have it. Please share for
Love
people
it.
who have not.
So it's you go through five things I can see, and I'm just going to pay attention to them in the room. Most of the time, Sarah, I could close my eyes and tell you what I see in the room, but the beauty or the magic in this is like, let me actually notice it and take it in for a second. So, five things I can see, four things I can feel with my hands, with my body, textures, the weight of myself in the chair, the shoes on my feet, the temperature, it's kind of stuffy in here, whatever that is. Three things I can hear, two that I can smell, one that I can taste. And I just go through that. What I love about that one is it gives my brain a task, focus on this, but the task is rooted in being present where I'm at. So it's helping, if I've been switching between tabs, it's starting to slow that down a little bit for me. So I like something that doesn't go full stop, but helps me pump the brakes. I think music is another good one, right? So you mentioned headphones. Put on a song that feels calming. Put on a song that you love where you can kind of get invested in, can I hear the bass line of the song? Can I hear the drum beat? Like slowing that down. But again, your brain has something to focus on. What are others that I love? I mean, if you're a reader, a book, I love some bilateral stimulation where we're helping our brain slow down with bilateral stimulation as our eyes move across the page. It's often a sensory thing for me. I think I've said this a bajillion times already. It's not that interesting, but literally just as simple as I got to get physically in a different posture. So I might sit on the floor, I might do some stretches, just some big, like, I've been holding tension. I just need to get really big and physically take up some space is a really good. Body and brain are telling me the same thing. It's okay for me to take up some space here. Or just like I can relax and calm down, feel how good that feels in your body as I'm holding this idea of I'm okay, I am safe, we're good. Those are a couple of my favorites. There's so many that we could talk about, but those are a couple of my go-tos.
Love those. And I think it makes sense to even just having you talk about that makes my brain sort of slow down to, you're up, you're at this higher level of elevation and to come to this, as you called it, a full stop, which I love. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that is hard,
Yes.
right? To go from this appointment to then go into the break room or the bathroom or wherever you are to get a moment and you're like, okay, take 5 breaths and don't think of a thought.
Yeah.
When you're so elevated,
Yeah.
to have this middle ground where you're doing the five senses, where you're reading a book, where you're listening to music. I love to write,
Mhm.
and so that I'm like physically writing out what I want to release. Like I have a stack of post-it notes at work and then I just throw them away or whatever.
Love that.
Or even like writing down my negative thoughts. Like I just
Mhm.
did this haircut that I thought was going to be terrible. And I
Mhm.
was in my head for 30 minutes, even just like writing it down so that that middle ground can kind of help get you to that calmer state. So, so good, Megan. I love this. So helpful.
Now ask me how often I'm doing them. That's a different conversation.
Also, yes to that, because I think I'm lucky enough that I have so many therapists in my life, including you.
Mm.
And we have this idea, I think, of therapists have this all figured out and they can handle it all and they are perfect and they know exactly how to like calm their nervous systems and all of these things. And when you say this, it makes us have more grace with ourselves that,
Mm.
okay, even therapists are not always taking care of themselves. And even therapists are not doing, hey, Sarah, do this tool. Like you could say this to me in a session. Hey,
Yeah.
Sarah, use this tool when you're stressed. But then
Yes.
the fact that you just said, I'm not always doing it. It's
No.
a really comforting feeling to know, okay, just have some grace with ourselves. It's not going to be perfect every single day.
No, no. I mean, you talked about the stylist trope of all the videos of just like dissociating at the end of the day. the therapist world of memes is full of like me telling my client they should really ground and then going home and like losing it, right? And so totally. I mean, it's so hard. And I think especially with the pace of life, this is where I come back to that conversation around scheduling. You as a stylist have done this so well for me as a client when I'm like, Sarah, I booked this haircut in between things and I'm coming in this frenetic pace. You do such a good job of helping me slow down in that, of just like, hey, I'm not rushed. I'm not stressed that you were 5 minutes late. You don't have to be either. There's that, like, again, I can kind of attune to your calm in that space, helps me. But very naturally, I mean, how organically do we actually get that space provided to us to slow down, to regulate, to check in? It's not often, if ever. And so it's really a thing that I think we have to create, and I do generally a pretty terrible job at creating, because it's just so unnatural to the pace of everything else that's going on.
I do try to be a place of calm because we'll get to attunement in a second, but
Yes.
my client comes in and is frenetic and, as we all are in life, it's like you said, there's so much input. So most people come in like, oh my gosh, I just had this going on and that going on. I have to leave early and I blah, blah,
Yeah.
So I often will put my hands on my client's shoulders and say, it's okay. You're here now. Just relax. But you just gave me an idea
Mm.
to actually use the tools that we can use on ourselves to our clients to
Mm,
say, you know what, let's just take a second and let's do the five senses. Let's just not even talk to each other for a minute and just here's what I want you to do.
yeah.
What five things can you see? And then go through it with them and then they are not only calm, but then their nervous system is calm too.
Yes.
Calmer.
Totally.
I like that idea.
Totally. Well, and I think, like, you've done such a great job again of, like, also providing this invitation that I didn't know existed before I was your client for, like, a silent haircut too.
Mm,
Do you, client, need to throw in some headphones and just kind of let this be a quiet, slow down with yourself time? Is that also providing you as the stylist space to do that, right? To go, again, there's so much power in that, like, modeling what I'm bringing in, and we can either join in that with someone and meet them where they're at. And I know when I do that, it's not super helpful. It's not a great session. They don't go, thank you so much for getting spun up with me. Or I can kind of do that hard work again. I'm being a counterbalance here, but inviting you to come meet me also in this like calm space. I love that idea of inviting clients to do that with you as like setting the stage for what we're
mm.
about to do.
We've mentioned a couple of times about attuning
Mm.
to other people. Can you elaborate on that a little bit about what that means and what that means for us as well?
Totally. So, at the risk of being too geeky, talking about the brain for a second here, we have these things called mirror neurons that basically are the basis for empathy. That I don't have to actively be experiencing something myself in order to empathize with what's going on for you. So, that's that example you gave of I'm hearing something really sad and I'm feeling that sadness with you. I'm mirroring it. My body may even be positioned similarly, right? Like I will catch myself often in a session. Let's say there's a ton of anxiety present, like I'm tense, right? It's that again, I don't have to work at it. It's not let me be empathic and join you in this anxiety. It's my body's responding naturally. I think, especially for people in industries where care is kind of at the basis. And then I think there's also typically a gendered component to this as well of what we tell, especially women, they're responsible for fixing, resolving, caring, nurturing, like all of that just sends us in this place of if something heavy and bad is going on for you, I need to be right there, not only in it with you, but I think for me, it's often internalized as I'm responsible for it. I got to make it better, or I got to make sure you can handle it by knowing you're not alone in it. And so that attuning, again, eustress, distress, body doesn't know the difference. So even if you're like, I have this awesome new thing going on and I'm up here in my energy, if I'm joining all of my clients there all day long, that battery life is so gone, like midday, I'm talking. Like it is not a very big battery. I can so easily be swept up in kind of the tornado of emotion and need and feeling that other people are in when I'm in their presence. Does that all make sense? Does that feel like the attunement piece is making sense?
I think a lot of people are going to feel that.
Yeah.
I even notice sometimes at the end of the day, if I haven't taken my breaks when the day's over, I almost feel a little bad for my last 1 or 2 clients
Mm,
because it has ramped up since the
mm,
beginning of the day, and I'm giving in a very different place at
mm,
the end of the day than the beginning of the day.
mm, mhm. Absolutely.
When a client comes in and just sort of a negative Nelly, I
Mhm.
don't know to explain it, or just, focuses more on the negative
Yeah.
side of things. Um, as a person who's sort of fought to stay in a more positive spot in my own head, in my own world, it can really kind of drag me down. Do you feel like there's attunement in that as well? And how can we sort of, you know, separate ourselves from that?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, absolutely attunement. It is that like it's the conversation we were having earlier of how do I maintain that something is going on for you without it being what's going on for me. And so I talk about this a ton in couples work. It's so relevant. This concept of it's called differentiation. And I think about it like a Venn diagram where you have your own sliver of your stuff and what's going on for you and what you're feeling and thinking. And I have my own sliver of stuff with my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own history. And then there's that like magical overlap of like, what does it look like for me to still care and not be totally eclipsed by what's happening in your part of the circle? This tension point all the time. And so that attunement that we're talking about, I think on the not so great side of attunement can look like fusion or enmeshment. Your stuff now is my stuff. You're having a really negative Nelly day, so now my thought life is really negative, and I'm just like bogged down there with you. We can also catch ourselves on this flip side of the coin, which is cut off. And that is like, that's all you. And I can't connect with any sort of empathy or care because I'm trying so hard to keep that separateness. That's you stuff. This is me stuff. Don't step on my lawn, basically. Like, we can do both of those things, and I'll catch myself doing both of those things. That's that example earlier of coming home to my husband who wants to tell me about his day and what stressed him out. And I'm like, no, I did that all day long, right? Like when I haven't paid attention and I haven't done a good job of caring for that, there's kind of this cutoff response, right? And so I think that work of differentiating, I mean, it's so nuanced, right? I think there has to first and foremost, for me, be a permission for me to have a circle at all, right? If I am operating from that enmeshed place of what's going on for you needs to be what's going on for me, I mean, I'm already lost from the start, right? It's not like permission, those questions we've been talking about, the breaks and the structure for creating and carving out that space for you. I think the more that I've tried to be and give myself permission to be online with what's happening for me, the less I have to work at that in the presence of other people. It's kind of like, okay, I'm aware of what's going on. And now what are my care instructions accordingly, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
mhm.
So it's that balance. And I think all of the practices that we're talking about are part of that balance and attending to that. It's just a really tricky, delicate balance that I don't think we get very much permission to do at all, to factor ourselves in.
It sounds like just as humans in general in this day and age, but also for us in the beauty industry, like we have to be almost a salmon swimming upstream. We have to do things that to take care of ourselves on the regular that is not necessarily mainstream, to not get on your phone on a break, to
Yeah.
not, just zone out, right? To like be constantly checking in on ourselves.
Yes, it's such a good way to put it. And I think so like there's a lot of talk about self-care, which I love that like therapy is working its way into pop culture. I also have a love-hate relationship because sometimes I'm like, that's not what that is. And I think self-care is one of those for me where I'm glad that we're having the conversation around self-care, but I almost feel like there's this reputation of self-care that it's luxury, which it definitely can be. It definitely can be. I feel good doing this and this brought something to me. But self care is also the hard work of I don't want to be present with this feeling. Man,
Mm,
it would be really functional for me to cut off at the neck and just be in work mode. I don't have the luxury of setting 15 minutes between clients. I can't afford to pause and check in with myself and going, we have to be really willing to do the hard work of self care if we're going to get the benefits of it as well, right? There is
yeah.
a real functionality to me disconnecting from myself. While I can look at it and go, that's sad, that's hard, what a terrible burden it is to disconnect. There's a functionality to that too, and this avoidance that can come through. That then something like burnout, it has to get big to get our attention, and we will
Yep.
crash out because it's like, you didn't listen to me at the first 12 warning signs, so here we go.
Yep. And that's exactly what happened to me. It was like there was this one moment, but it was lots and lots and lots of little moments leading up to it. But it was the one thing that happened that I was like, I can't do it. I can't
Yeah.
go to the salon tomorrow. I cannot do one more head of hair. I am done. I'm done. I'm done. But I think it's such an important thing that you said. I think we think of self care as like bubble baths, yoga
Mhm.
classes, trips, massages. I think of self care as how are you taking care of yourself? And if you're disconnecting from your feelings, if you're letting your nervous system elevate all day,
Yeah.
that is not taking care of yourself
Yeah.
at all. And so I think it is such a great point that you bring up that it is hard work. And
Mhm.
we have to continuously check in on ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it that I need to do to take care of myself right now, to have this self care moment?
Yeah. And how often I'm curious for you, like, how often does that feel like the thing you don't want to be doing? Versus
Ah,
the thing that's like, like, this is nice. I get to experience this.
well, and I think what happens to me is I'm like, "Oh, don't go scroll on your phone," but again, I don't always take care of myself in that way because, you know, I have a family outside of work and I have other things and like all of us do. So your phone pings and you have a break at work and you look at your phone and then suddenly I'm 5 minutes on Instagram and I'm like, "What have I done with my these 5 minutes where I could have taken this time for myself?" I think we have to be really diligent about ensuring that we are taking care of ourselves in those moments, and
Mm,
it takes a lot of hard work. It's
yeah,
not just like self-care for your day. It is really allowing yourself to know your own needs and check in with yourself on the regular.
totally. Diligent is such a good word there. It's like any practice, learning an instrument, working out. There is this like drudgery to it sometimes of I would rather not. And I think of like how helpful it is to like anchor into like what's my why? If I'm gonna make myself check in with my feelings, and I know they're not gonna be, I'm having such a good, peaceful, pleasant day. There might be some grief there. There might be some heaviness. What's my why? Like, why am I doing that? Because if I don't know that, I'm not gonna do it. And I don't
Yeah.
have to work hard to not take care of myself. That's a pretty encouraged thing, I think. I don't have to work at that. I have to work at making sure and being diligent that I am creating these spaces.
Mm. How can we how can we meet this like knowing like, okay, I've gone all day without checking in with myself. I know that I'm at this elevated state
Mhm.
so high that I need to disassociate in my car for an hour.
Mhm.
how can we meet ourselves with grace in that moment? And
Mm,
then I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit of slowing your brain down to that medium speed instead of that full stop speed.
yes.
Is that kind of what you would recommend if we find ourselves in that moment where we've had the busy day, we haven't checked in on ourselves, or the busy week and we're like just completely fried at the end of it? How can we meet ourselves with grace
Mm.
in those moments?
Yeah, that's such a good and important question. I think a lot of that, Sarah. So we've talked about like self honesty, but I'll sometimes talk about that like self confronting. It's that
Mhm.
hard, heavy work that we're just talking about of like, I totally ejected from my own life, and there was a functionality to that or a necessity to that at times. So that self-confronting, I need to come back. I know I've like put myself to the side. I know I'm not showing up as my best for me or anyone else. That self-confronting, I really think we can only do that well when we're pairing that with self-compassion. Oh, of course I checked out. That was a lot of heaviness. Why would you want to be present with that? That makes sense to me, right? Like, man, it's been a full week, hasn't it? Yeah. Are we ready to come back to ourselves? What do we need to kind of bridge that gap? That self compassion of I deserve that. I deserve to be connected and my feelings matter. Even if they're painful and uncomfortable, I've got this. So it's that pairing or those crossroads of if I'm gonna be honest with myself, I have to know how to do that kindly and that grace that you're talking about of girl, of course. Of course you said yes to that bid for connection, and that was a great friend move and not what you needed. So how do we get you what you need, right? It's that
Mm.
little conversation with ourselves. And I think self-compassion work often is the helpful like middle ground that we're talking about for me. A lot of it for me is like a dialogue with myself. So I don't know if that resonates for everybody, but sometimes it's literally like I'm talking out loud to myself on the drive home. It is so easy for me to, like, throw on a podcast or music and keep more input coming in. In fact, Sarah, if I'm up here, that's what my body is gonna direct me to do. It's gonna say, "Don't slow down. We still don't know that the stressor's over, so keep it up," right? So, again, it's that, like, "Hold on, is that actually what I'm wanting and needing?" Because some days I choose that from a completely different place. Or is that like my body doesn't know how to slow down right now? And so I actually need to stop that and have that external dialogue with myself. Whew, today was a lot, wasn't it? Like, how are we doing? What do we need? That kind of thing.
Yes, 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 yes. I, in the last year, have started a driving home playlist, and it's all
That.
calming instrumental.
Mm,
There's no lyrics. And
yep.
so I just drive either in silence or with that. But I've never talked to myself before, but that sounds incredible because what happens to me in my head is I'm like, I did this person did that. I did this person did that. It's not like, Sarah, girl, that was a big day.
Yeah.
Moly, no wonder you're exhausted and feel kind of drained and out of breath. Like, how can we what do you need right now, Sarah? That was man, that conversation with Susan was heavy. How can I let go of that and remember that that is not mine to carry? And I love this idea of having a conversation with yourself because it puts you less in the like in your head and actually being able to have that compassion for yourself. And when you said that self-compassion piece, it's not something that we readily give ourselves on the regular.
Yeah.
And just hearing you say that, it just makes my body soften. It
Mm,
just makes me sort of settle in and say, like, yes, I deserve self compassion. I am so compassionate with everybody that sits in my chair every single day.
mhm.
And I don't give that to myself as frequently as I should.
Yeah.
And so having quiet conversation with yourself and self compassion at the end of your day feels like a game changer and so nourishing
Mm,
for our frazzled nervous systems.
yes. Well, and you talked about like writing as a great tool for you. This is where I'm like, know yourself, right? Writing is a great tool. Maybe that looks like a letter to yourself. Like I am journaling to me and having that dialogue. Maybe it's I'm talking out loud. But I think it's, yeah, how do I dialogue with myself about what has happened. Because again, if I'm up here and I've been switching tabs so rapidly, you're so spot on that what's happening is I'm like, yeah, she said that thing. And then, oh, this is my right turn. And then I did that thing. And was that weird? It's just so sporadic. We never get to have the full conversation.
Mhm.
Actually having to write that out or say that out loud is that like, let me complete the thought here for a second. Let me slow down and stick with this, not just my brain is ping ponging and continuing to do all of what it's done all day.
I think this is a wonderful game changer idea to
Love
have that self-compassion talk at the end of the day. Megan, you are a wealth of knowledge and you have shared so much with us today that has been so incredibly helpful. And I'm just thinking about all the hairstylists and beauty professionals out there, especially the newbies that can gain something from this that they take with them, that this can be really beneficial for us in our careers. So I just want to say thank you for being here and sharing this with us.
Thank you for having me. Something that I think about often, and this may not even be relevant to include, but just again, that self compassion piece for stylists. Like, I know how hard this is as a therapist, where there is structure and intentional boundaries and training. And I know it's only going to be for at most 80 minutes, right? And that's going to change over. You guys are doing that without all of that and how much harder that is. I'm just going, there's so much deserved compassion. And I just want to normalize how hard that is because it's hard with all of the boundaries and all of the structure. Without it, how much more so? And so I would love if this is helpful to someone and also just deeply respect what it is that you guys are doing. It's hard.
Thank you for saying that. I think a lot of people are going to feel seen
Mm.
having said that. Hmm. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being my
Oh,
client and a therapist that is willing to share this with us. It's really a gift, really a gift.
thank you for
If
asking.
you all out there are interested in working with Megan, why wouldn't you be? Um, and you live in Kansas or Missouri, you can find Megan at casey relationshipinstitute.com. And Megan's email is Megan, Megan, at casey relationshipinstitute.com. Does that sound right, Megan?
That that's where to find me.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad we have talked about this for quite some time. And it's, sometimes intimidating to get on here and look at because we have these natural conversations just like this when you're sitting in my chair. But then to put it on screen with microphones and things like that, it can be a little intimidating. So I just want to say thank you for being willing to do this with me today.
Thanks for asking me. My imposter syndrome, went off the charts when you asked. And I was like, Sarah, what are you doing asking me on your podcast? So it feels like an honor. And yeah, it's just so fun to get to continue these conversations.
You just like dropped your mirror neurons in a conversation like no big deal. And you're like, I have imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't know why you have that. But yes, to continue this conversation, I am sure I know that this, what you have to say will resonate so much that people will be asking for you to come back. So hopefully we'll see you again.
Would love that.
Okay. All right, Megan, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks, Sarah.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to this entire thing if you're still here. And before you run back into your life, I want to leave you with this. If you've been attuning all day to others' nervous systems, to clients, to stories, to energy, it makes sense you feel fried. It's understandable that we want to zone out in our car for a bit after work. Our nervous systems have just been working overtime. So, a couple of invitations for you. Try that mid-level nervous system reset before you start taking those deep breaths. Try to do something to get back into your body before you start calming down. And the other invitation is try that third person conversation after work. I am telling you, it has been a game changer for me since I interviewed Megan for this podcast. Every time I leave work, I have that conversation with myself. Wow, Sarah, that was a real big day. You deserve a pat on the back. Let's talk about the entire day. Sometimes I will say, Sarah, you started out with this client and that conversation felt heavy, and then you had this one. And really just walking through your day and having that outside perspective can really help yourself have a bit more compassion. I want to give a big shout out to Megan. Thank you for being here. If you're in Kansas and Missouri and you want to work with her, find her in the notes below at CaseyRelationshipInstitute.com. All right, friends, thank you for joining me. And just a gentle reminder, this is a podcast, not a replacement for therapy, and I am not a licensed therapist. I'm a fellow hairstylist who cares deeply about our mental health as beauty professionals. Everything we share here is meant to support and encourage. If you need deeper support, please reach out to a licensed mental health professional in your area. Thank you so much. I'm Sarah Beck. This is the Balanced Hairstylist podcast, and I will see you in the next episode.